Protests in Iran are now in their third week. People have turned out in anger there over the skyrocketing cost of living. But rights groups say a brutal crackdown on the protests have left close to 550 people dead. These latest rare pictures verified from social media show body bags lined up outside a morgue in Iran over the weekend. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump now says Iran has proposed negotiations with America after the U.S. president threatened a possible military strike on Iran over the violence. Here's more of what Trump had to say when asked whether Iranian leaders have crossed a red line.
Response?
They're starting to, it looks like, and there seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it.
Well, that comes as pro-government protests are also taking place in Iran. Thousands of people turning out there with these latest pictures coming today from Iran's state television. France 24's international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani, joins me now for more on the situation in Iran and the situation between Iran and the U.S. And Kethevane, Donald Trump has threatened to take action against Iran. What could that look like exactly?
Well, look, we might know more on that tomorrow because Donald Trump is expected to be briefed by his top security officials, national security officials, like Marco Rubio, like Pete Hegseth, like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, to brief him on the options and possibly for Donald Trump to make a decision. And there's really a broad range of options, according to U.S. media, what they could propose to Donald Trump when it comes to Iran. And it ranges from, first of all, trying to help the protester, boosting the protesters, especially by giving them the ability to get around the current internet shutdown that basically brings an information shutdown in Iran. Donald Trump saying himself that he was going to talk to Elon Musk about sending those Starlink satellite terminals to Iran in order to give those protesters back access to the internet. There's also another option which could go hand in hand. These are not one or the other. They could go together, is more sanctions on the Iranian regime. There's also a consideration for possible cyber attacks by the United States on Iran against the Iranian military, for example, against some key infrastructure. And finally, there's the option of military intervention. The only thing so far that's been pretty much put off the table is the idea of sending U.S. boots on the ground. That's not going to happen, but there could be some strikes by the United States on Iran. One issue, and that might be why it's been 10 days that Donald Trump basically first said that he would strike Iran if they killed protesters. We've seen that there are more than 500 protesters that are believed to have been killed, and he has not done anything yet. That is because there are two big concerns. One is the concerns that intervention by the U.S. could be counterproductive because it would feed into the sort of Iranian regime's propaganda that these protesters are all puppets of foreign powers that are trying to destabilize Iran. So that is something that is being taken into account. The second bigger concern is about those military strikes, is the potential for an Iranian retaliation. Iran is not Venezuela. Iran has the capability of retaliating against U.S. interest in the region, and that is something that they're really very closely monitoring right now for the U.S.
So, Kethevane, after Donald Trump made those threats of military action, he then went on to say that there could be negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. What exactly would they be negotiating?
Well, look, everybody is staying pretty mum about what these negotiations might be about. Donald Trump said that the Iranians had called him to try to set up the meeting, that the U.S. is willing to work on setting up that potential meeting. One thing to note is that the Iranians are also saying the channels of communications are open. We're willing to try the diplomatic route. out. And there was the Omani foreign minister in Iran this weekend. Why is that important? Because Oman often plays a role of mediator between the United States and Iran when those diplomatic channels are not directly working. However, not much has come out as to what the U.S. is saying that they want from Iran and what Iran would be willing to negotiate about. So there are hypotheses as to what we could be talking about here. One is the sort of obvious first step would be the stopping the crackdown on protesters, which is what Donald Trump has been talking about. The second one could be a potential sort of attempt at sort of a regime change. The U.S. trying to put pressure on Ayatollah Khamenei to leave. That could be something. Another issue, because there's also energy involved, natural gas in Iran, that could be one. And of course, there is the big one, the nuclear program. The U.S. wants Iran to fully give up its nuclear program and uranium enrichment. The Iranians so far have said that that is a red line, that they will not stop, that they have the authority to have that nuclear program and that they would not stop. We'll see whether or not we get more information about that.